Hi, welcome to Control Talk. Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending January 31st,
Almost February.
2021. Getting ahead of myself. This is episode 389, where we talk about smart building control stuff and HVAC and whatever else your co-host in mind. The man, the myth, the legend, the well-dressed Kenny Smyers wants to talk about. Kenny, welcome to the show, big dog.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. Yeah, we'll get one more day before February, but I can't wait to see January go by January and by 2020.
Getting close to warm weather, right, big dog?
Well, warm weather. That's why I got, I'm very excited here. I got my ACI golf hat. Thank you, Barry.
Oh, yeah. Me too,
Gordon.
Barry. Yeah, ACI, thank you so much. They sent me one too. And my son, Axel, has gotten it. He's hidden it. He won't tell me where it is because I wanted to wear it on the show. And he said, no way, Jose. It's my hat. My hat.
There you go.
So, well, but thank you, Barry, and thanks to the team at ACI.
Anyhow, yeah, they gave us a nice little sporty.
I got one of those too. Yeah,
I know.
Black.
Well,
mine's black and gold. It says Pittsburgh Steelers on it.
Oh, nice. I'll trade you.
I got you. And we're real thrilled. We were distributor of the year for ACI.
Very well
again.
Done.
And so,
congratulations.
Yeah, I want to say thanks to the team at Stromquist and Company, led by Rob Allen and the rest of the team at Stromquist for the great job they did with that. And a special thanks to Barry Gordon and the team at ACI for all the great products and support they provide.
Oh, they do, and they've added, their product line has gotten bigger. At Jackson, we use a little bit of their gas sensors. I mean, don't forget, they saw a full range of, gas sensing equipment that, in this day and age, you can't go wrong. But your typical CO, NO2, they got some really good fixed installed sensors.
Yeah, and as usual, I mean, if you've followed the show for long, we've covered ACI since day one, and I mean, among other things, they're locally known for being one of the best businesses to work at, and so they just a great company, great culture, and we named him Downtown Barry Gordon because he was kind of flashy back in the day, right?
We used to call him Flash Gordon. Remember?
Flash Gordon, Barry Flash Gordon. That's
right.
That's
I thought you were going to come back with that and countermand what I was saying about downtown. He reminds me of a guy I went to school with that was named Barry. We called him Downtown Barry, whatever his last name was. So
he reminds me of Flash Gordon.
He was a good basketball player. And he would every time he'd shoot, he'd make a little symbol.
Yeah, got you. Well, we missed a couple of weeks, and partially that is we had a couple of guests lined up that canceled at the last minute, and that kind of leaves us in the lurch. So that's why we hadn't been on, but we got a great guest lined up this week. But before we get to our guest, Kenny Smyers, there are some happenings on the Controltrends website this week. How about telling our audience about that?
Well, the first one was, Contemporary Controls had a virtual open house Thursday and Friday, and George Thomas and his team at Contemporary Controls are very excited about, their continuous success in that network area. Everybody's used Contemporary Controls, probably don't even realize that all the OEMs use them. Just very reliable, equipment and products. And then they have a great newsletter, and we repurpose that every time they come out with one, but it's a good one. And then we also had LinkSpring. The webinar has come and gone, but I'm sure it's recorded. In fact, I've seen it again coming up, but it's basically LinkSpring partnered with Tritium, and they are one of the oldest Tritium OEM partners since 1999. And we were really well done webinar because it was very complimentary. In other words, it wasn't touting their horns or tooting their horns. It was that the need of LinkSpring drove Tritium to keep moving forward with the framework, and that some of the contributions LinkSpring made were formidable. Especially they were the first folks to port Niagara, so that's pretty incredible accomplishment because LinkSpring started as a contractor. Terry Swope took his team from Hard Knocks Contracting into one of the top vendors in the BAS world.
Yeah, well, we're very partial to LinkSpring too, among other things. That Mark Peacock, the host of the Controltrends Awards, is one of the movers and shakers at LinkSprings and making it happen. So Terry and Mark and the team just do a great job. So congratulations to our friends at LinkSpring.
Right, and I have to thank Mark one more time. He got me a little Etsy thing that was really cute. When I was down and out, he gave me a nice little pick me up thing. It's kind of a surprise. So thank you, Mark, again. And we got a great show. In fact, the changing of the month means that the AutomatedBuildings.com is going to have a new theme, a new editorial theme from Ken Sinclair, and he's been very interesting, very esoteric sometimes with the way he sees things. We've been COVIDized, and now we're going to talk to Ken about what's going on with promoting our industry, bringing more talent to the industry, making the awareness key, and that there's been a lot of progress made. So it's going to be a really good show.
Well, good. Well, why don't we just cut right to it? How about introducing Ken?
Love to. Ken Sinclair, owner, editor of AutomatedBuildings.com, is no stranger to Control Talk now and no stranger to our industry. In fact, Ken is the most consistent contributor of consolidated information in our industry. And it's a pleasure every time we get a chance to speak with Ken. Welcome to the show, Ken Sinclair.
Welcome, Ken.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a great introduction.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you because it's obvious you're out on your yacht today. And tell us what's behind you there. That's pretty spectacular scenery we're dealing with here.
That's Mount Baker. That's what I see when I look back towards America. That's what you guys look like. You're hiding behind that mountain.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, I know you just put that mountain up there so the Americans couldn't come over the border and get in Canada.
Better than the wall, huh?
Yeah, that's in Washington State, just outside of Bellingham. It's about 10,000 feet. The COVID clarity has made it pretty amazing viewing. So I just thought I'd show you what I've been looking at.
Boy, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it brings
it means that much of a difference, the fact that the carbon mess that we put in the atmosphere has cleared so that you can actually see something you couldn't see before?
Actually, the real clarity on that is, these are volcanic mountains. This is Mount Baker. Mount Rainier is the mountain behind Seattle. Mm-hmm. I've had days where I can actually see the Mount Rainier behind Seattle, which is over 100 miles.
Wow.
Wow. It's right across Seattle and Tacoma, and that whole I-5. Basically, that whole piece of land in between there is just I-5 up and down. So,
well, it's something. We hadn't planned on talking about this, but now you mentioned it, Ken. I mean, it's like, have you been tracking all the stuff that Elon Musk is doing with the solar? And, we've talked about the solar wall before and being able to store the solar, but now he's got this solar roof, right? That you replace your roof and it's better than a regular roof, supposedly. And you generate the solar power there. And then on top of that, it stores in the Tesla power wall. And now with blockchain and, some of the cool stuff that you've been talking about, you and I could be neighbors and swapping energy back and forth if we wanted to. So, I guess the first question out of the bat, and this isn't covered in your issue, is, man, do you see, days of being able to see Mount Baker, Mount Rainier being the future, that our whole environment's going to get cleaned up more, and just due to the technology, not necessarily to technology shifts?
Well, actually, the big one, that probably the clarity thing has more to do with aircraft than cars, because if you take a look at that's Tacoma, basically Seattle, the Seattle airport, and all the airports up the west coast there. So it's our local island here. We used to push out about 100 flights a day, and we're probably down to about 4 or 5. So I think that is probably a bigger factor in the clarity of the sky than it's particularly for us, because that was a bigger issue. But that being said, I think we're going to be a long time before we actually have air traffic move back to the level it was at before.
Well, it looks like Elon Musk has got a prototype out on an electric airplane. And we're right at the heart of it, right?
Yeah, actually, with all our water out here, like you can see behind me here, we use a lot of float planes. In fact, the best way to go to Vancouver is in a float plane. And we actually have done our first flight from Vancouver to out of Vancouver with an electric float plane. The batteries need to be a little bit better to get across the water, but we're getting close. And the other thing is for us is that basically it flies over, it sits until it gets loaded and goes back again, so that we can charge it every time. We can charge at each end, kind of thing. So actually works.
That's really, really cool. Wow. Well, I didn't mean to get on a sort of an off tangent there, but I think everything's related at some level. So
Well,
let's,
I can, another invite you, I can bring this all right back into our February edition. Ken, you always have a theme, and it's always a banner theme. It's a title. It's your new vocation, building automation. And you say, whether you read building as a verb, noun, investigate being part of our building automation industry to satisfy your curiosity, passion, innovation, motivation, location, and then you make a play on the words edge, spelled out EDGEU-cation. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on what provoked you to come out as that being your theme for February.
Well, all of this stuff that's happening is really good for our industry, building automation, believe it or not.
COVID stuff, right?
COVID stuff, it's just made a lot of changes. It's basically a lot of the buildings are going to have to be repurposed. People are more acceptable to having automation between them and their buildings. The together apart theme that we talked about last month, where we're actually all working together, but we're all in our particular spaces, that whole working model. So the whole working model is changing. It's going to mean a lot of people coming into our industry to automate buildings, and it's beyond automating buildings. It's automating the process of how we're going to work in the future. And so what I've done is we've been working at Monday Alive, and we've been the whole theme for the month of January was redefining how we're going to increase our workforce, how we're going to get new people into our industry. And we've been focused on that. So I tried to pull that all together under this little slick title here, your new vocation, building automation. And of course, we look at it from the noun, the building, that's the traditional meaning of building automation. But we can also look at it in the bigger sense that we're all going to be in the business of building automation. And there's just a bunch of stuff falling on our industry, new things we have to learn. Video analytics is one, wireless, all of these things are changing. And I think we can take a look at the autonomous vehicle, and we can see that the autonomous vehicle is coming screeching right up and smacking right into our building. People are starting to expect the kind of touch and feel when they sit down in a building that they do have in their autonomous vehicles. So we take a look at those autonomous vehicles. They're using video analytics. They're using radar. Our industry has always struggled with basically scale. We don't have enough of the same thing to build something. So if we can actually use some of these technologies that are being used in vehicles in our buildings, we have a whole new breed of sensors. And I've got a great article from Scott Cochran this month on that, basically just talking about these new sensors that kind of just take a completely different look at how that's all done. So the new sensors, I think, and the new way of doing it, the IoT approach falling on our buildings is causing some pretty radical changes. So I think we need to reach out to young people. We need to reach out to the females in our industry and get more of them involved. We also need to try and scoop up some of the folks that have had the misfortune of being displaced with COVID.
All right, Ken Sinclair, I got to interrupt because you were saying a whole lot, and I fancy myself as being pretty quick, and I'm having a little trouble keeping up. So let's go back to the sensors you were talking about, and let's go back to, because you made a very bold statement that, the buildings are changing, the sensors are changing, everything. Could you give us an example and then sort of frame it for our audience in terms of, what do they need to be aware of? I know that they need to read the article. What do they need to be aware of, and what's the opportunity? The opportunity you've already defined is everything's changing. There's a great opportunity, but could you be a little more specific on a couple of those points?
Well, yeah, I think that the video analytics is the one that's kind of hitting us really quick. Is as we start to move into location services in the buildings, because that becomes important because of COVID in the retooled building. And the other thing that's going to happen in buildings is they're changing more from the same people coming to the office every day to different people coming for particular work groups. It's going to be more like an office, more like a hotel atmosphere. So we need to quickly identify people. We need to keep them safe, keep them, eventually they will probably have COVID credentials that'll have to be confirmed. So there's all of these statistical things that are going to start evolving into our world. The video analytics is a neat one because video used to be, like, wow, you can't afford a video camera. And of course, now you have a cell phone that has 3 or 4 or 5 video cameras in it. The price of the camera has become almost invisible. And so people are now making sensors using that technology. And what they see is that once we start using video analytics, we can start to do a whole bunch of things other than the original task. So, and it just becomes software. So the functionality of these things starts to radically increase. And we got a great example of that in an article that Scott Cochran has got in. It's actually an interview, interviewing I'd have to pull it up there. Maybe you can pull it up, Ken, and read it. It's read Scott's interview. It's not it's not in one of the links. If you click on the interview tab, I apologize. The February issue is just about online, but not quite yet, because we're doing this Saturday. I'm going to get it online tomorrow, so I don't have the. Anyway, if we take a look at it, let me just click here.
Well, I found the one from last month. Let's see. So Scott Cochran, contributing editor. I hit that one. It didn't take me to that link, but Ken, in the meantime, let me just digress. Well, I'll get that up here and post it. But what really impressed me about the first part of your February edition was that you shared some very personal information about your childhood and about your father, and about how the comment you made that if you find something that you do that you like to do and you have a passion for it, that's when work goes away. It becomes something extraordinary. It's the opportunity to keep exploring something you love to do. Tell us about that. In fact, I'll read that because I don't think our readers would even know that much about you. It says that what your father told you. Great wisdom, Scott. My dad told me to make your work something you like doing, your passion, and you never work another day in your life. So very true. Your father was a fiddler, forced to work during on a farm during the Depression. That's a very interesting story. And just digress a little bit there, and I'll set the Scott Cochran information up. Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that as all that personal and stuff. It's just sort of that's the way it is. That's where it came from. That's where my roots are. What we were trying to do is we were trying to build a bridge, and I was using some analysis that Scott had pushed at us too, just about how we have to be passionate about our industry. And I think it's really easy to be passionate about it, but how do we get started? Like, because we all come from varied backgrounds, and that's why I threw that in there. It wasn't to expose my childhood, but I guess somebody has taken it that way. Yeah, so it's what I was, the diversity is. I grew up as a pig farmer, so it's a bit of a stretch how you get from there to here. So, but it's basically just following your passions and following what your curiosity too. It starts with your curiosity. And you basically start, actually, yeah, drag that out as well too. I'm actually taking some advice from Oprah here. If you click on the actual article on the making building automation your vocation, we go to Oprah magazine, and they're talking about how to find your passion, and it starts with curiosity and stepping through these steps. So kind of an interesting transition. I think everybody could, it's always a great story is how did you get into the industry? And of course, my joke is after leaving the farm is the air conditioning was the first one in the book. So yeah, I wanted to start there. I have no idea what this book is about.
Nice. Well, Kenny and I, so we have a common. We were both members of the Lucky Sperm Club. We got in family businesses. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I missed that one. So.
Well, it sounds like though that, but you found but I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, what was it about air conditioning or this industry that attracted you initially?
I think my options were is I could be a diesel mechanic, a cook, and or this air conditioning, and I knew what a diesel mechanic was, and I had a pretty good idea what a cook did, and it sounded like it was more fun. I don't know.
It worked out. Whatever it was, it really worked out for you. But I think these are really good stories to share. As as you mentioned earlier, we need to attract more people into the industry, and how do we get them in? And so I think it's a really good. I think you're spot on. It's a really good question. What was it about the industry that attracted you?
Yeah. The controls always fascinated me, that side of it, and of course, very quick. Well, actually, my first job is when I came out of tech school is I was working for a company basically supplying equipment, and I ended up fixing that stuff, actually fixing gas-fired infrared heaters, standing on a ladder and just working through the controls and trying to make all that stuff work because it had a reasonable inkling of electrical and circuits and things like that. So just kind of grew from that, and then I ended up working for Johnson, and then got trained in Milwaukee, and kind of kept on moving. But I always found controls interesting. Even back in the old days, I'd go in on Saturdays and take all the pneumatic controls and plug them all together to see how they actually worked, because that's the only way you can ever figure out how any of this stuff works, is to actually play with it. So yeah, so it just kind of kept on growing from there, and then I don't know, just opportunities. I think our industry is like that. Is you kind of stumble along, and then if you've got your mind open, there's always just great opportunities opening up, and something new. After that, I ended up operating buildings with a developer, and really learned. Like it's one thing to talk about controls, but once you actually get out there and actually have to keep the building safe. And I was in Alberta at that time, so 40 below, trying to keep coils from freezing and boilers on and all that kind of stuff. You learn a lot of things. And then I ended up as the assistant energy analyst for the province of Alberta, doing in the early days of computer simulation. So kind of got involved in that, and then stumbled through that a bit, and then fell on top of Ddc. The first Ddc system in 1975 at the University of Alberta. We were building with, computers as big as refrigerators, and we had to create all our own sensors and stuff like that. So that was the start of the Ddc industry. And then I followed that to the West Coast, and kind of grew up with the likes of Reliable and Delta. And then I quit and started Automated Buildings, and so there you go. There it is in the thumbnail.
Wow. Well, I think what I hear over and over is, Kenny, what I'm hearing here is if you've got any curiosity, any gumption, and any interest, our industry just affords all sorts of opportunities. I like to tell people it's never a dull moment. People that work with us, something new, it can be something new every day. And, but there's an underlying consistency that if you understand the theories, you can figure out, troubleshoot problems. I think that's one of the really cool things about it is it's like there are a set of rules that underlie it, but within those rules and structures, there's an infinite variety of challenges and problems and opportunities.
And if that was the past, oh my God, the future is just unbelievable, because now everything is changing, and that we got this collision of IT technologies. We've got the collision of wireless technologies. We've got video analytics. We've got sound is now becoming something that we're monitoring and is becoming part of our sensors. So the amount of sensors, my prediction for people like yourselves is the amount of sensors that you're going to be selling in the future is and connecting people to is just going to be tremendously immense. And how that's all going to come together, I'm not exactly sure, but anybody who can understand it is going to be gainfully employed.
Well, that's been the ironic positive aspect of COVID-19. Like you said, it forced a lot of accelerated changes, and the whole, using terms like people now are being repurposed. First, we talk about buildings being repurposed. You got to have just a safe, healthy environment, and there's no way around it. Like you said, if you don't do it, there will be a consequence. Like Eric always says, people, when all things are even, are going to go to the one that's the friendliest, the safest, and the healthiest, and the one that markets that the best is the winner. But clearly, if you don't move in that direction, but the efforts that you're making, do you think there's an efficacy there that we're seeing the response? I always like to see traction. I mean, you're getting a lot of attention from Monday Live, and a lot of big, important people in the industry are getting behind us. But do you think we have the critical mass that we're actually going to draw those people to our automation world, our building automation world? I mean, do you think it's working? It's always nice to see some sort of a metric or something that measures success, or is it still all basically ideas and I see a lot of traction from my viewpoint up. I see it happening where the technical schools are being very successful. They're full. The trades are doing very well, but COVID brought that all on. So we got COVIDized. We're being repurposed, and the future looks optimistic, right?
Yeah, but if you take a look at what automated buildings does, and you go take the history, the 22-year history, we've always been sort of talking about something that hasn't been really mainstream. And then you guys always give me this great compliment. It's like, wow, you saw that coming. And it was like, yeah, it's not that hard. It's just, I mean, the stuff is happening. It happens on a small scale. And there's a few projects that start, that lead it. And then it just takes the industry 5 to 10 years to catch up. So it's not that I'm psychic or anything like that. It's just that the industry is so slow changing that it's, that's just the way it is. And I think some of the stuff that I'm biting into right now is not, it's not so fluffy that it's going to go away ever. All these things are going to change. And that's why I'm pretty confident that I'll be right about this. But to your point, is there a project that is actually doing every one of these things you're saying? No. But there's projects that's doing every one of the pieces of what it is I'm saying.
Well
and
said.
slowly we'll start to see those pieces come together. And exactly how those pieces are going to disrupt our lives, I don't know. I have no idea. But I know they are going to disrupt our life. I know there's going to be new people in our industry. And as the new people come, actually, Anno had a great example on, he had two great examples on Monday Alive that I liked. One was was his son got a pet turtles and stuff, and so they started keeping an aquarium, and he then got involved in all the things he had to do to properly care for this. And so he got himself his little Raspberry Pi, and he basically created his own control system. And by the time he created this whole environment with misting and temperature control, at the end of it, he actually understood what it is we have to do in these buildings, and just making that link between something he wanted to do and the buildings, and how he learned all about that was just a great example. So yeah, there's like a lot of how I came into this industry was because of the DDC industry, learning what I learned and then sort of applying it. And the changes are not that different than they were when we were trying to move from pneumatics to DDC. We had all this inertia going that way, and nobody wants to change. Nobody wants to put in these new systems, and they're told stories about them, the ruining equipment, and we had all kinds of stories in the early days. And it's sort of the same thing. We're at that stage. And the other thing, that the other commonality is that the market is incredibly fragmented. We've got all these new players coming in with pieces. We know that all those new players, they're not going to be here, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 2 months from now. But the inertia is moving in that direction. We're going to have new sensors. We're going to have different ways of doing things. So,
Agreed. Well said. Yep.
Probably didn't explain that very well, but
no, I think because you're right. It's a hard thing to put your finger on directly, but the inertia I think is there. But the industry taking 5 to 10 years to really complete the process and bring it up to where you were saying. Eric calls you Nostradamus, but you're saying there's a pretty clear indications of which way things are going.
yes.
And then you came up with the concept CLEAR, the clear path to passion, curiosity, learning, enthusiasm, awareness, and recognition. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I think it all starts with when if you read the article, the patter is back and forth between Scott and I, and we, the joke is how did you get so smart? And that's probably a question that that you guys need to answer as well. As you said, it was a good thing you were both born into it, but and as was Scott actually too. So there you go. So but the thing that kind of drove you on was an ongoing curiosity, which kind of turned into a passion, and how do we develop passion? Because that's what we need to do when we're bringing any of these new people in. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what trade they come from. It doesn't matter what their background is. If they have a curiosity and a passion to do what it is we're doing and to find out more, you don't have to hold their hands. They just take off. They'll look at, and especially now with education, they'll basically train themselves with YouTubes and that's the kind of person you want, is self-started. But the big thing is you can't keep going and getting them from running away from the building and bringing them back and say, no, this is what we want you to do. They have to have that true desire to want to do this and find it fun and intriguing. And it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. And do you know what they did in the such and such a building? We should try doing that, and or we should try procuring some of those systems. And so that whole growth thing, and there's a lot of that comes with the new people. Another thing we talked about, and I think we've talked about it before, is this job crafting. The idea that when you hire a new employee, probably telling him what you think you want him to do is dangerous. Really what you want him to do is you want to sit down with them and you want to have a discussion with him. And I said him 3 times, but it can be a her as well, of course. And sit down with them and discuss how they can come into your company and what assets they bring with them. A simple example would be you're hiring them to help you do some programming, and you're talking about that. Then yep, they've got that requirement. And then it's what's your hobby? Well, I love building YouTube videos. And it's like, oh wow, so you could build some YouTube videos for the company? Oh yeah, no, that'd be no problem. So all of a sudden, this job crafting, you're hiring him as a programmer, but his hobby is building YouTubes. Okay, I need that skill, and I need other skills that you may have. I've been fiddling with Raspberry Pis, and I've got a couple of prototype things I've been building. Happy to work with that, and so all of a sudden you see what's happening is you're hiring him as a programmer, but then he came with this skill and that skill, and all of a sudden your company has to change to use those people.
Okay, Captain, I got to interrupt because I think you're making some great points here. But Ken, I know you're a sailor, right? You sail,
Yeah.
correct?
Both-
So, and I get what you're saying, but and I think as a business owner and somebody that's managed people, there's more. I mean, I think we have to do that. But then here's the question, the gist of the question. So you're a sailor, you got people on the boat, and you got to have somebody that's got to do this sail, and somebody's got to do the rudder, and somebody's got to do this, and somebody's got to do that. Okay. There's a lot of, stuff that's not necessarily fun on the boat to make the boat go. So are you seeing, I mean, as we attract people in the industry, I think it's great to create this passion for them and this job crafting, but how do you get them motivated to do the grunt work? How do you get them motivated to swab the decks when the decks need to be swabbed?
I love your sailing analogy, so I'll take it that way. So sailing is a pretty, happens out front here, and it's all kinds of competitions, and the old salts generally do really well because they know the wind, they know the currents and stuff like that. But the first kid that shows up on a sailboat who actually is very effective at using GPS, basically in the middle of the race, points out to the captain that we are actually going backwards because of the currents and the waves and stuff like that. We are not moving towards the mark, we're moving away from the mark. Things that you can't really see, so the whole technology piece has become the navigator. So you've got the captain, but
Right.
The person who actually determines and wins the races is often using technology.
Well, no, I get it. And I completely agree with that. I mean, I got that piece down, but here's the deal. It takes more than one young person to be on the team, right? So what if they all want to be the GPS guy and nobody wants to do the other stuff? I mean, how are we handling that as an industry? Because it seems like it still gets back, and Kenny, maybe you can hop in here too. It seems like it still gets back to, now you got to all, because if they're coming on your boat, they all know how to use the GPS. So they all want to be the GPS person, right? So how do we motivate them so they'll, we can get them to swab the decks too? I keep using that analogy because nobody wants to do that, right?
Well,
I don't know. That's the team, I think, and bringing young people in. Younger people are more able to team than older people. We are
Good
the
point.
people
Good
who
point. Yeah,
basically go to. So we tend to want to separate. Kids tend to work in hives and stuff.
that's good.
This
Yeah,
whole idea that you never have to push. What been my experience is we move into the younger folks is you don't have to push them together. They're like bees. They all kind of cluster together, and if somebody gets a good idea, they're all over it.
that's a great distinction, Ken. Yeah, I'm thinking like a boomer here, where we're all competitive with each other. That's a really great point. So the key then is you just got to make sure you're sailing on the place they want to sail, and as long as you're doing that, they'll by instinct work together. That's a great. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. Okay.
Well, it's got to be an open-minded captain, and basically, that's a great example of the basically creating their own jobs. And of course, the skill of the captain is to basically recognize the skills of all of these people and kind of keep this whole thing moving in the right direction.
I think it's self-initiative. I think you have to create that goal that, if somebody is willing to work and study it, like you said, Ken, coming in on Saturdays. I mean, we all did that. I mean, that was the only way to get it. You never, in my world, we didn't get paid for training like it is now. Kind of, it's more. If most of the smartest guys I know in the industry were self-starters, they learned because they had to know how to do this, and they had to know how a network worked. And they just kept pursuing stuff. So to Scott Cochran's point, being interested and being curious is so important about being successful, especially when all this new technology keeps getting introduced, and not all of it is going to be important or germane to what you need. It might be overkill, might be too many bells and whistles, but to know how to make something work optimally is a true challenge. It takes many, many pieces and parts and puzzles, and you learn it from different people. But a lot of it is learned by yourself.
Yeah, no, I well said, Kenny. Actually, we got a great guy that we should, Ken Sinclair and Kenny, we should probably get him on to do this. It's like, because we keep talking about the carrots with the generation that's coming in. But, Aaron Gorka, he's a young guy, runs a company. I mean, I'm sure he has to have tough conversations with some of his folks about, well, you need you to do this and they don't. So let's shift gears while we can, guys, because Ken, the other thing, Ddc Sinclair, that you've sort of been alluding to, and I think that, the conferences, I mean, you, me and Kenny, we grew up with a saying called drink up Shriner, right? Which meant we went out to meetings and we went to an AHR or whatever. It was a party. We learned a lot, but it was a social thing. It was something we all look forward to in our industry. But hey, conferences as we know them are changing. So Ken Sinclair, talk about what you're seeing in that regard and what we can expect in the future.
Yes. Well, last month we had that great interview from Scott and Jim Young, and they basically talked about the real common and how conferences would be changing. And Scott has now set out ControlCon. This is an event they have every other year, and this is the year for it. And they're going to do it as a hybrid. And I think this is the model how our events are going to evolve, because everybody we still want that touch and feel, the face-to-face. We want to pull the communities together as much as we can. Travel is becoming, and is for the near future, is going to be problematic. There's no doubt about that. And so the idea of having a event where folks can, drive in for a day, drive in and go back home that night, for those people that can do that, has a lot of power. And what they did in their the sessions they just did before this is they actually went to each one of the major centers, or where they had a distribution center, and basically held it. But the power is that we can do both. We can have the touchy-feely sessions and the bar time and the party things that we're all used to, and local, and probably pull together our local community and make them even stronger. But we still have the advantage in the hybrid model of pulling in expertise from farther away and having them in a virtual presentation like we're doing here. So it's kind of a mixture. And again, it feeds on our together apart kind of an analogy as well. So yeah, so I'm real pleased that he's asked me back as a keynote speaker, and we'll try and speak to that whole hybrid piece. So now, actually, the other one hot on the trail, actually, it's just slightly before. It's unfortunate that Project Haystacks event they actually even overlaps ControlCon. So we've got two events kind of starts with Haystack, and then there's a couple of overlap days, and then it rolls into ControlCon. But it's a virtual event, so that's good as well. If you've gone out to the Haystack events, the last one I was in San Diego. It was a great event, and dragged us together all over from folks all over the world. I remember met a girl programmer from Israel, and I had my daughter with her, and we all kind of connected up and had a great social connection, and a great, talking about how this haystack stuff was all fitting together. But again, in the analysis, what was happening there is it's again this together apart kind of touchy-feely, as we had people coming together from all over the world, and what was bringing them together was they basically all believe and are pushing the haystack theory, or basically protocols, and yeah, so it's not that hard to flip that into a virtual mode, because the people are coming from all over, so it's easy to. I'm not really saying any words.
No, I think you're saying it really well, Ken. And I think the other thing that's really great about the hybrid meeting is it does allow people to attend on their own time frame as well. If they're not physically at the event, you know, and they can, and they're tied up on Monday, but they want to see your session, they can always watch it later. And not only that, Ken, it's really great marriage advice, you know, together apart. I knew you and Oprah had something really going together. So together apart, I like it.
You
I
know, the
like it.
thing about trade shows, and we did a couple articles on those back in the day, Eric, is the efficacy of trade shows and events, can't live with them, can't live without them. In other words, on one hand, if you look at it from the person paying all the bills and the travel time, like you said, the logistics and the expenses, if you can circumvent those costs, and get to the meat without paying for the all the
Potatoes.
yeah. So I mean, and we're going to see that. That's part of the new world we're in. Is that there's going to be less and less group events for the sake of them. They used to have like every year the vendor would have a major event, and they normally either did it by themselves or else they coupled into the HR. So everybody had a big meeting, planned during the HR period because they knew all these people are coming. 60,000 people are coming there, and it's a great time to get rally the forces and give updates and whatever. But so I think the practicality of it is just that we're going to start to learn what is extracted, like these metrics coming out by some of these big realty companies about they're obviously putting in the framework of why you still need to come back to this building that we bought, and we need you back as a tenant as soon as possible. So they're going to do the indoor air quality and make it a healthy building, but they're going to extract the most important things that come out of coming to the corporate center and meeting with the executives and the team and learning through that osmosis that you can't do on the internet. So I think just it's like you said, Ken, earlier, it's definitely going to change. What that change is going to amount to and how it's going to affect us in our phase of our careers. But the next group down has a lot to do. They have an opportunity to forge their new workplaces, like you said, and it'll be interesting to see how it works out. Now, not to change the subject entirely, but education is going through that. So universities and colleges and community colleges and high schools. I mean, I think that a child that doesn't have the opportunity to go to a classroom and benefit from those aspects could be in the future a very interesting person because of the no development of skills and stuff that for the social end of it. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see. It's just
yeah, that was a great introduction, pulling together a whole bunch of concepts. I'd like to add a couple of concepts to that. Is once we go hybrid, virtual or virtual, one or both of all of those. The globalization is the other piece, is that as soon as it's on the line, then we've got people poking at it from all over the world. People who would not have come to Detroit to come to ControlCon will actually come because they can just take a look and, wow, this is interesting. This is what they're doing there. Let's see how they're doing it. And what happens is that cross-pollination occurs. The other one, when you mentioned education, now that's amazing because this is how our industry is getting re-educated, how we'll learn how to use video analytics, how we'll learn how to use all of these new technologies, radar that is falling on us. But with it, we bring interest and focus on our industry too. We used to do these things, and even in Chicago, I'd go, we're at the AHR show, and I mean, you're walking down the street and they ask you why you're in town, and you say it, and they have no idea, the magnitude of that show. There's 60,000 folks in town, but the average person in Chicago doesn't really know what it's all about. But as we start to put this into social media, we start to have YouTubes, people can fall on it. They can pick out pieces of it. And I think you're going to see it as more of a melding pot. And I think it's going to be one of the ways our industry is going to come out of the closet and actually, be seen for what it is. And again, we go from boring buildings to exciting mashups.
Well, especially when the government, I know y'all probably saw it, that there's $180 billion getting earmarked for K through 12 schools. And the 5 areas, that they want to make sure that you budget that money on is, the ventilation, filtration, temperature, humidity, ionization and UV, you know, and so, I mean, that brings us into the forefront. That brings us into the main center stage because of the, you know, unique things we do in this industry, you know, and that is we know how to do that. And it's very important now, and it's getting budgeting. So again, the irony sometimes is that, you know, it being at the right place, the wrong time, or the wrong place, the right time, we as an industry are being moved from that, some of those remote areas where it's taken for granted. You don't really care if the heat's on until it's not on. And you know, air conditioning, you know, it's always funny. The service guys tell me that they love the winter time as far as customer care, and because customers that are waiting to get their heat turned on are much more gracious and much more. They pay that bill. Where air conditioning, you know, how, you know, they're cranky and they say, what took you so long, and why does this thing keep, you know, breaking down? This broke down 5 years ago. You know, it's like they don't understand the constancy of maintenance. You know, and you know, and that's another thing that's going to come back into our world is you like something, you got to comb it. You know, you got to make sure that you budget for it, and you need to make sure that you take the time and attention to learn. Where if you put something in 10 years ago and it doesn't work, it's probably your fault it doesn't work because you didn't change anything. You didn't do anything to work it. You know, so I think this awareness of it's not magic. It's a mechanical process, and it requires, you know, share the budget, share the concern, and you know, the right amount of attention, and then you got a much more wholesome environment. You are going to get to that safe, you know, healthy building. But this is going to be drivers. You know, is again that there's money available to make these places better for the people inside them. And again, I read so many of them are, they're saying we definitely spend 80 to 90% of our lives inside of buildings, you know, so we got to take that and make it a better relationship, you know, for both the building and the people.
Actually, the one word I wanted to pick up on that you just said was awareness, because almost everything we're doing right now is increasing awareness, awareness to the general public. And in addition, it's increasing awareness to the holes in our systems. You know, when we're going to have to guarantee that we're going to keep these buildings safe, you know, like ventilation is going from becoming nice to have to becoming you know,
mandatory, required.
Yeah, I want you to sign off to tell me that the ventilation is okay. So this whole awareness thing is, I think some people see, you know, they see the whole IT and all this stuff, and they say, "Wow, I'm not part of that, so you know, this is going to be bad for me." And it's like, no, no, no. All of that is going to be incredibly good for you, because if you're changing filters, if you're cleaning coils, if you're making this stuff work, you're never going to see business like you're going to see now, and you're never going to see when buildings are actually getting retrofitted and they're going to actually change. They come to you back to you and say, "How can we change this? How can we compartmentalize the top of the shopping mall?" Actually, Tracy Markey just posted some big malls in Arizona that have just, you know, they basically are vacant. Once they're vacant, I mean, the buildings are there, the power is there, they'll get repurposed. They'll turn into old age homes or grow ups or whatever. But there's going to be radical change, and it'll involve more control. And you started with Elon Musk and the whole environmental movement. That's falling on our buildings too. I mean, the whole idea that these buildings will generate a portion of their power or all of their power. The other thing is the battery technology is rapidly changing. The battery technology for buildings is evolving quite differently than it is for cars. The cars, it's very expensive to make the batteries because they have to move. In the building, the batteries don't have to move. We've got some projects up here in Vancouver where they're using zinc, and basically the idea is you basically generate the electrolyte and you store it in tanks. And so therefore your storage is the size of the tank, not the size of the battery. Separating those two things, which you can't really do in a car, in a building, you know, just gives you a different twist. So there's all of these new technologies that are falling on our industry, and they just radically will change. Can you imagine if somebody said, "Okay, I've just slipped in storage here now, and we're going to buy as much of our power off peak as we can." What sophistication and amount of sensors that's going to add to the automation system in that building, and also the the grids are the time of day rates, the time of hour, and we'll probably even have whether it's green or or carbon generation power. So all of these things that all gets overlaid, and that awareness falls on our buildings. So our buildings become again more complex, and we need to react to all of that. So it's just we're just on the this whole thing. If we could fast forward another 20 years, and like the automated buildings saga from DDC to where we are now, I think that the next 20 years will just be incredible. And the building automation industry will be so changed you won't hardly even recognize it. It's going to be integrated. I think if you take a look at what the electric car, how fast the electric car has actually started to change. Nobody really knew it would go that fast. They knew that electric cars would come in, but it actually, the fact that it shifted over and it's actually a percentage, and people have actually said that we'll have carbon cars off in 10 years, 5 years.
Right. But it took the major manufacturers to get behind it. When Ford did that commercial, I thought that was one of the best commercials I've seen in so many years, that they took their classics and they made them electric, Bronco, Mustang, and
Mustang was like that's like a.
But and BMW did it, and Audi. I mean, so now that once you get that main vendor, the mature vendors to get on board with something, then it happens real fast.
There's like a tipping point, right?
Right. Well, listen, and Ken, you mentioned one thing, but I'll tell you what, with the new sensors and about the the VOCs, the volatile organic compound sensors, the particulate sensors. I mean, 2 years ago, it wasn't a whisper. Somebody put them in their thermostat, and they said, "What the heck's that for?" And Eric and I went to that one Realcomm IBCon and met this gentleman from South Korea who built a sensor because his own family was afflicted by so many allergies and off gassing. Nobody really understood that when you paint a wall, that wall is off gassing for many days, and when you put a new carpet in, it's off gas. I mean, nobody knew really. The awareness was just it was we were all dumb about it. And then all the children started having issues with their skins and contact allergies and whatever. I mean, holy smokes, did that get changed? All of a sudden now, people, the first thing you do when you examine something is what is the lethality of this thing? When you have your yard treated for weeds and whatnot, dandelions, that stuff lays on your grass there for 30, 40 hours. And if your dog runs out there and runs through the yard and comes back in, to go from the grass to the carpet, now that's inside your house. So, I mean, just the whole pantomime and learning of that and that awareness process through commercials and through social media and through professional or, people selling it it's just extraordinary. Well, now we know how we can cause ourselves problems that we ignored before.
Right.
And it's just an amazing process.
Well, listen, boys, we're going to need to wrap this up. Ken Sinclair, anything else you want to hit on before we call this one cookies? And say drink up, Shriners.
A big aha moment we had when we were all chatting about that is I think we've all spent a life here in the last bunch of years thinking that intelligent, smart buildings are buildings that are totally integrated. And what we're seeing now is that possibly we're into the next shift where we're starting to see fragmentation of ideas, just like what Ken was talking about is one. We've got the whole COVID as another. We have these sensors that are going to be wireless and stuck on the walls. We're moving towards a new paradigm where the intelligent building may not be as connected as we originally envisioned. And what's happening is we see that in our homes as well, as we see all of these systems evolving. But what the advantage of Hey Google or Alexa is that it has the ability to pull together 300 or 400 systems and allow you to interface with them and have them interface with you. So I think we're starting to see that model starting to change our industry. And of course, that we don't really understand that model, and that model is inside of the heads of the people we haven't hired yet. So let's get out there and let's tell them about their new vocation, building automation.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, Ken. There's a brave new world that's upon us. And if you want to learn about it, you got to go to places like automatedbuildings.com. Our guest has been Ken Sinclair, automatedbuildings.com. The February issue is out, so check it out. And as Kenny Smyers is fond of saying, nothing is obvious to the uninformed. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Ken. Yep.
So Kenny, there you go, man. Great stuff from Ken Sinclair as always. Anything in particular stand out to you about the conversation today?
Well, I mean, I like this little mechanisms, the clear being, how do you keep your passion, stoking your passion, and I like the idea of we really turned it around. Where buildings being repurposed, but so are people, and there's a very, very good opportunity in our industry. It's just, through the unfortunate times of COVID, the things that need to be done, our industry provides them. Our contracting base, probably busier than they've ever been in their careers or in their histories. But and again, the new people coming on board, how it's a very interesting thing how to manage them. It still comes down to teamwork. It still comes down to leadership, mentorship, chain of command. Some of the things we talked about, and how do you get somebody from day one to become a career person and really make benefit from the career, but also provide exciting efforts that make this a better place, make buildings better, make the world better. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool industry. We're lucky to have Ken Sinclair, I think. And I don't know, dude, man, it's interesting times. I'm hoping we're almost through this COVID thing. I'm excited about getting the vaccine here pretty soon, hopefully. And I've talked to, a couple, I had an old buddy of mine from high school, wouldn't you know it, he was one of the, let's just say one of the hippie sort of pot smoking, experimentals, back in the day. And of course, he goes on to become a doctor and then eventually goes from there to being in big biotech, right? And this guy goes to Burning Man, every year. He has since it started, but and he talks about seeing Elon Musk out there. Apparently he goes every year incognito, but so the Burning Man, the big event out in the desert. But he's telling me that because I was a little concerned about the vaccine. He's going, "Oh no, man, this thing is just rock solid." That they're using a new technology that goes through the cells and actually is able to target specific things. He says they've been testing for like things like cancer and all kinds of diseases. He's going to revolutionize healthcare, but he says no, it's very solid. So,
Good.
but I think we get on the other side of that. Maybe the economy gets back to normal, huh?
Well, it has to a certain extent. It has to heal. It's like having a bad bodily injury. Buildings were injured in many regards, and as you take the measures to improve them, bring them back on board, you've done a good thing. So I mean, some of the stuff that happens is truly a wake up call into the way we socialize. And will masks ever fully disappear? I doubt it, because I know people that wear them just now because they feel better about it. So,
well, I actually look better in a mask. So,
well,
I mean, it does cover up some, I tell you, it's going to hurt is the plastic surgeons, right?
Well, it's social responsibility, but I don't think we're going to have I'd like to say that the economy is getting better. I think what's happening is I see a lot of people do things that really impressed me with working around it, to all the way going back to Realcom, Ibicon, forging ahead and not saying no, even though the show became a hybrid and the concept was demonstrated. But I think that, as you said, the government's thrown a lot of money at measures to make our world better, our buildings better, and then we have a responsibility, I think, to be reciprocate and make sure that you do the social distancing,
right.
And pay attention to the rules, because then if we're going to get on the right path, it's going to take cooperation.
Whatever your political views are, I mean, the guy we got in the presidency now is going to be good for our industry because, he's all about the environment. And, when Obama was in, it was really good for the environment there too. Whether you agree or disagree with that, if you're in our industry, I think it's going to bode well for, like you were saying about the K through 12 and the money that's appropriated for that. So between COVID and the environment, I think it's going to be a really good time for our industry. What do you think?
I would agree. And as Ken mentioned during his his conversation was that the sensors we're just going to continuously, as it becomes less and less expensive and as wireless becomes more and more accepted, and the RLE Technologies folks, man, they've really done some really great presentations now on wireless, how well it works. I mean, some of those old days, I remember walking around with the tool, that was measuring the strength of the signals, and
right.
as soon as you used it and then put it on, then something else would happen. Somebody'd move something, or door would close, or somebody open up their blinds, and all of a sudden, here we were back, trying to figure out where to put this thing. But so the network, the strength, the signal strength of wireless has been proven now that it does have limiting factors, but if you're aware of them, you can work around them and get a pretty very affordable installed high-tech solution, so that you got the best of all worlds. Again, if you have the opportunity to work with a contractor or a distributor that knows their way around a building, there's options that weren't available. There are options now that were simply not available 2 years ago. So if you haven't updated your understanding of what your options are, you need to talk to somebody in the business so that you can get a better presentation of what your choices could be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's modular, it grows. You don't have to take. And then this CARES Act has been a remarkable thing, but I don't think people really count on to it. It doesn't have the force detour, that it should have had. It should have been like everybody should have been in this CARES Act thing right away, because of what it lets you do. It lets you fix a problem and then have an economic carrot that you can deduct 100%. And not only of the equipment you did to improve your building's health, but the contracting costs, you can write that stuff off in 1 year.
So you write the labor off as well. That's really
right.
cool.
That's
really cool.
So anyhow, those are some serious
good stuff. But before, as we wind down, I would like to special shout out to Jim Young and Howard Berger and the team. I know that they did a marvelous job with the Realcomm Ivacon. That wasn't what they hoped for, but the fact that they persevered and they took a stand and they did the best they could. And I know they learned a lot out of it. And like we talked about the hybrid conference, wouldn't expect any less from Jim and Howard and Lisa, that, they're sort of, again, setting the trend and sort of set an example for what the future will hold for conferences.
Right. And then I think everybody's looking forward to Las Vegas. I know in our world, AHR is pointing all the trajectories are see you in Las Vegas 2022, so
get your vaccine and stay away from the gym that my neighbor goes to, and you'll be fine. You'll be there. So, all right, Kenny Smyers with that. Special thanks to our guest this week, Ken Sinclair, automatedbuildings.com. The February issue's out. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Have a great week. Remember, be bold, stay in control, stay safe, and stay relevant.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers.
Grow up, be nice and behave, but I've never wanted